So, when the challenge of the Jeffersonian dinner was agreed upon, what type of research did you use to construct the menu?
Well, in approaching the kind of the topic is DEI.
Right.
And I have a background in youth activism work,
Okay.
and community activism work. So I mean it's a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. So diversity, equity, and inclusion is really about, highlighting the the communities that can be highlighted. So in terms of researching this, I've already had some tools in the bag, because I've done used food and cooking as a way to engage in activism, especially as a tool with youth, and as a tool in low income communities, because
Hmm.
gathering people around food allows for that conversation to happen. Food is a binder for people. In terms of like researching who are our most vulnerable communities that are being targeted at this point. So in looking at the different recipes, like one of the items is fry bread.
Hmm.
You know, historically, our Native American and indigenous folks have, around the world, have been kind of shafted in
Right.
just culture and land and economics. So highlighting fry bread is a way to spark that discussion, right?
Interesting.
So understanding the history and cultures and the food of necessity is what we're trying to highlight to spark this conversation of DEI. Even dessert is not necessarily based on any specific culture. It's called wacky cake. It's basically during the Great Depression and World War II, there was a you had to get rations for flours, eggs, and butter, right?
Right.
So they created this very simplistic form of chocolate cake so they could still put dessert on the table without having to sacrifice. And it kind of highlights the cool conversation of what food means from from low income folks all the way to the wealthy, because the wealthy form is just a more decadent form of these base recipes from every culture,
Yeah.
every class around the world. That combination of like great food starts from great stories and great tradition,
Yeah.
and then you evolve it from there.
So, because you're known for your personal chef fusion meals, even branding it fusion dining with your name you as part of the fusion spelling,
Right.
what type of fusion artistry will be part of the Jeffersonian dinner menu?
This this is more traditional, because we
Okay.
do that too. There's not a lot of fusion, with
Okay.
the exception that I do not pretend to be the expert of everything. Uh, but when I start building my menus, there's a cohesion of a story behind it. So when somebody comes to me and says, "I want you to cook for me," my first question is, "What adventure do you want to take?" I can do anything traditional. And then my background, I'm a big history buff. So
Okay.
knowing where food comes from and the inception of food, and the story behind food, that's the part of me in the fusion. The you
Very
in the
good.
fusion is knowing those stories.
How'd you convert that knowledge into your early career as a chef and then break out the personal brand?
So a lot of it was about recognizing what my passion is for food, because
Okay.
it's not the older I get, the more I realize that it's not about skill. It is really about what what you want to say as a chef,
Okay.
as an artist, right? Because
Right.
I can find operators, right?
Right.
People that is like, here, this is the recipe, cook it,
Right.
right? But what's missing from that, without that education piece, without that knowledge piece, is a connection to the dish. For me, it's all about that connection, the story, where it comes from, and that progression, so that, I can tell my story. I have something to say, and just the artist part outside of the tactical. So how I describe my food usually is functional art.
Interesting.
It serves a purpose of feeding the baseline needs of feeding people and putting a smile on their face. The esoteric part of that is if I can cook for you and then evoke a memory, right? Or
Yeah.
bring you to a place in time.
Amazing.
That is the goal. So the art part of my story, why I want to do this, my branding, is that we're evolving as the world gets smaller to a sense, right?
Right.
We're crossing not just cultural boundaries, but access to different ingredients, foods, right? But
Right.
how do we build this next, just like we talk about building the next society of what we look like, what we look
Interesting.
like as a global world? What does food look like in that respect?
Finally, what 3 people, living or dead, famous or not famous, would you like to make a meal for? What would be the menu? And as the 4th diner to join in, what would you like to talk about?
First and foremost, Anthony Bourdain,
Ah,
one of
okay.
my culinary heroes. Um, and for him, I wouldn't cook anything necessarily fancy,
Right.
because it is about the baseline recipes, but give him my take on it.
Excellent.
I think he would draw. I would probably cook a dish where I can take him through a global travel, like
Right.
his show,
Yeah.
but something very basic, and see if he can
You
pick up
got
on
2
that.
other people too. You're going to serve it to
Right,
everybody. So
right.
who are the other 2?
And then I think my mom.
Nice.
My mom passed away when I was young,
Okay.
so she didn't see this progression
Right.
of
Right.
where I am, and since my dad's a chef but very solely focused on Chinese cuisine,
Right.
like I would like her to see and know the effects of the places we went, right?
What's that 3rd person then sitting there?
Um, this
Okay.
new pope, which I
Okay.
find fascinating, or the last pope,
Okay.
because he comes from a like uh, a more worked in more poor and impoverished communities. What I would talk about those people
Yeah.
is culture, society, and progression on the different arenas. Like, because my mom has an immigrant story, Anthony Bourdain has traveled the world, and the
Right.
Pope has done all this work. How do we
Right.
build the new great society,
That's
given from low to high, who we are, where we come from, and what we know?
This is Patrick McDonald for HollywoodChicago.com. Copyright 2025.